Okay, you guys are free.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the May meeting of the Amherst Village School District. Could we start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
to
to the flag of the United States
States
of America and
to
to the republic
which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Mrs. Giuffredo.
Mrs. Snyder,
Present.
Mrs. Gillis. Here. Mr. Engel,
Here.
Mr. Jacobozzi,
Here.
Mr. Zappa.
Here.
I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda as presented, including any addendums.
So moved. So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by
Zap.
Zappa. Second
Seconded by
by,
Jacobozzi.
Yes.
remember you guys to give us a second so we can process that, all right? Any discussion on that? We're gonna move forward with the roll call. Go ahead, Amy.
Mr. Zappa,
Aye.
Mr. Jacobozzi,
Aye.
Mr. Engel,
Aye.
Mrs. Gillis. Aye. Mrs. Snyder.
Aye. And we'll move
Motion
forward
carries.
with the treasurer's report, Mrs. Giuffredo.
Yes, good evening, board. This evening, I wanted to cover two things briefly. I wanted to update the board on the Amherst Public Library bond. It passed at the polls. We are waiting for a certification on the final vote. And we already last week with bond counsel and investment banker, the public library, and myself met a kind of a kickoff meeting. And what will be coming next then will be the certification of the vote. And then after that, we will begin preparing the preliminary official statement. And then we will have a rating call with Moody's. And then hopefully sometime in July, if the market holds, it's a favorable market right now. If the market holds, we will issue bonds for the public library, $5 million worth in the middle of July, likely. I'll keep you updated on that as new things happen with the issue. I wanted to update the board on the fiscal year-to-date position of the board with respect to revenues and expenditures. You typically receive this at the board meeting. It is revenues and expenditures for the month, this year, as opposed to prior 2 years, and fiscal year-to-date revenues and expenditures. And I just wanted to update that revenues have come in so far as of the end of April, $1.2 million over last year. And obviously we still have May and June to receive. We've received $300,000 more in line one in real estate taxes and about $58,000 more in public utility personal property. Revenue, other revenue is up a couple $100,000. This has to do with investment interest and insurance proceeds from the power. As far as expenditures, we are running about $1.3 million over last year. Certainly to be expected. Salaries are about $600,000 ahead. Benefits are running 300 under, and if you recall, we had a premium holiday with our Lake Erie Regional Council of Governments Health Insurance Consortium that happened in December. We have capital outlay running ahead of what it would normally. We did purchase, I believe it was 7 buses, over $561,000. And then as an aside, we will update the board as we learned new things. The 5-year forecast typically would be presented this evening to the board we have learned a couple of things. We have learned what our foundation settlement will be reduced for this year, which is $730,000 and change. There are 3 remaining settlement payments, the 2nd May and 2 in June. So those will be reduced to just over $100,000 each. We have learned about some impending cuts for next year, but not exactly what they are. We want to be mindful and present a rational and logical forecast, neither one too optimistic nor too pessimistic. That's not what's right by our public. So we will look to set a meeting for the week of May 25th to present the board the 5-year forecast update for May. That is the rest of my report for this evening. Mrs. President.
Thank you, Mrs. Giaffrido. Can I have someone make a motion for Treasurer's recommendations 6A through 6E, please?
So move. Second.
I missed who was first. Teresa motion, Jacobozzi second.
Yes, ma'am.
Any discussion? One of the things let's talk about to get into the minutes, the extra meeting that Mrs. Giaffrido was referring to, May 27th at 7:30 a.m. Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or concerns about the treasurer's recommendations? Okay, roll call please, Mrs. Giaffrido.
Yes. Mrs. Gillis.
Aye.
Mr. Jacobozzi.
Aye.
Mr. Engel.
Aye.
Mr. Zappa.
Aye.
Mrs. Snyder.
Aye. And now we'll move on to the superintendent's report, Mr. Sayers.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Snyder. Just a couple of things here. As the board is aware, typically May is the month where we recognize all of our retirees. And we normally have a cake and a nice little reception and take a lot of pictures and those kinds of things. And unfortunately, we're not able to do that. But I did want the board to know that, like with so many other things, we're looking to recognize our retirees in an alternative kind of a way, similar to what we've done with other programs. And so over these next 2 or 3 weeks, I would encourage everyone to check out our website, our social media platforms, and you should be seeing some recognition for our retiring staff members, and certainly want to thank them for their service and dedication to the Amherst students and community, and wanted the board to be aware of that. And along the same lines, our Crystal Apple winners, typically, again, this is a month when we recognize those folks at a public board meeting, and that process is underway. And again, we will be looking to recognize our volunteers who give so generously of their time for the betterment of our school district. Again, you should see that recognition on our website and social media platforms within the next several weeks as well. So wanted the board to be aware of those 2 things. And just the final thing, I know I mentioned this last month, but I think it bears repeating. Again, just a shout out and a congratulations to everyone, our students, our staff, our families. It's just been incredible to see the way everyone has come together through this very difficult time to make the best of it. And again, just wanted to say thank you to everyone. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Steve. One thing I wanted to mention along the lines of the Comet Award, or the Crystal Apple Award is the Comet Award. That's another thing that is organized by Mr. Harkula. And so we've been in communication with him, and he was going to reach out to the students electronically to see if anyone was interested in nominating any staff this year for the Comet Award. So he'll be getting back to Teresa and I with any nominations that we might receive from the kids. With that, we'll move on to the administrative reports. Mr. Molnar.
Yeah, thank you. 2 items. First item is just as you'll see on the board agenda today, we are kind of wrapping up a lot of the hiring process that we've done this spring. We have one more position we need to fill at the high school for technology, and I think we'll wrap that up probably in a week or so. But we have a great pool of talent that is joining our district. Very excited. And I just want to say thank you to all the administrators who've been on those different interview processes. It's been actually 4 or 5 weeks of almost every day some interviews are going on. In addition to some staff members from buildings who also participated from their homes to get their input as well. So I just want to thank everyone. And again, we have a great talent pool coming in and joining the district. The other thing I want to mention is, so this spring, of course, has been a very interesting period of educating students. And we were kind of, as you know, thrown into it right there. We had a great plan that we developed leading up to the first few days of home instruction. We were one of the districts, I think, that we've been recognized at what a phenomenal job that we have done, our staff, our students, our principals. Now, in other times, of course, if we had more time, we would have loved to get more input and more thought into what we were doing. As we look forward to the fall, we have to prepare for this kind of a scenario again. So one thing that we're joining, we're very fortunate that 2 members of North at the Lorain County Educational Service Center, Dave Miller and Mike Triska, they are organizing a teacher collaborative for Lorain County, and it's going to be for all Lorain County school districts. It's a 2-day event. The first day will be for teachers from every school district to participate, to reflect and share, the strengths and weaknesses and positive and sometimes negative things that have occurred over the last few weeks. And then the second day will be for administrative teams from each district to kind of look at that information and reflect so that we can help as a whole county prepare for next fall. So our principals are getting about 4 to 5 teachers from each building, about 20 to 25 teachers from the district to form a group to participate in that teacher reflection session. And then we will, as an administrative team, join the administrative session again to help gather all these different ideas and things that really worked and kind of strategize and prepare for the fall to just only improve upon a possible situation where we're in the same boat. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm glad we're going to be participating in that. It should be a very helpful session, not only for Amherst, but for all the counties and schools, because we make a great team, as I think Steve would agree to, that our county has really great school districts that support each other, work together, and share ideas. So I think it'll be a very good thing that we're a part of. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Molnar. Mr. Engel, the JVS report?
I don't really have a whole lot. I mean, we are doing the same thing that everyone is doing. The big thing is how we're going to deal with the hours that students have not been able to actually do the hands-on things that they are normally required to do so many hours of. And when we last chatted, the state had not given us any direction as how that's going to be handled, whether they're going to have to do some of that this summer or whatever. And that's a big concern to a couple of them, especially like cosmetology and some of those that have to have so many hours of experience before they can take the state test. So otherwise, we're moving right along. Recognition is going to happen. They still haven't quite finalized exactly how that's going to happen for JVS graduation, or at least I don't know of it if they have from that perspective. We'll chat about that sometime this week, and because it's coming close to having to make that decision. But the last I knew, it was going to be a drive-by thing, kind of. So that's all I have at this time for the JVS, unless you have questions.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Molnar or Mr. Engel?
Question for Mike. Mike, all your interviews were done by Zoom?
Yes, we did most of them by Zoom or Google Hangout, which is very similar. And in some some finals were in person with social distancing practices in place.
But for the most part, given the traditional way of interviewing, which was face-to-face in person versus the virtual way we're doing it, what did you find to be more effective?
Obviously, in person is always more effective, but I think because of the situation we were all in, like as we're doing now with this meeting, everyone has become so much more comfortable with doing this that we really got a good feel for every candidate and their personality, and they were really comfortable. And if they weren't as comfortable, it showed. But really, it was a lot. It was very close to having it in person.
Do you feel going forward you utilize this technology going forward after this whole COVID virus thing is a memory?
Yeah, I think
Hopefully.
yeah, I think we would. We were able to actually interview a few teachers and principals from different states, Kentucky, North Carolina, and so I think that would just opens up the pool when you can do something similar like this through the internet.
Good.
Anyone else?
I would have a question also for Mike or Steve, either one. Knowing that you're having this Lorain County consortium of what we're going to do in the event that we would have to continue this or that this would happen again, what do we think that the state is going to require school districts to do before August gets here? And do we really think that we're going to be able to start school in the traditional fashion in August? Do we have any indication of that from the state?
No, I can speak to that. We actually have, and that's a great question, and one that many people are asking. We actually have weekly meetings with the county superintendents every Friday morning, and the Lorain County Health Commissioner is a part of those meetings. And he has indicated to us that we probably won't have any idea until sometime in June. In terms of what August might look like and what might be required of school districts. So obviously that's something we're very interested in terms of what the state is looking at and what they would require. But unfortunately, we don't have that information available to us at this point in time. But we have certainly made it clear that we need to know as soon as possible. So that we can make the appropriate plans and preparations. But certainly we'll keep you posted as we move forward.
Great. And I would say that, Mike, I know you don't have much to do. So you should think about how we would open school under these conditions if we had to do this as well, because that would be a whole different process. Because from a meeting a teacher standpoint to a new teacher, these students all knew who their teacher was this year. So
Right.
Those introductions were all. So I think we should think about some of that stuff as soon as we're done with this year, if not before that, so that we're ahead of the game. Because come August 1st or end of July, and they say we got to open school this way, that's 2 weeks, 3 weeks till we have to be ready to go. So I think that so that Amherst is on the shelf with a plan that it doesn't need to be shared, but I think it should be ready so that internally everybody kind of has an idea of what's going to happen, so that it's like, oh my gosh, how are we going to have an open house? How are we going to do this? How's the kids going to meet the teachers? All that stuff, because that would be more traumatic than what we had to do in March when we had to send everybody home where they knew everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we recently did a survey where it was more of a technical survey about like how we were doing so far with this situation. We learned a lot. For example, we learned that of the respondents, I think over 600 respondents, only 2% said they didn't have internet access at home. So we'll be able to kind of plan accordingly when we have more information. And I think, I'll definitely be open to another survey in the future and hearing back from those teachers. Hopefully, I think we'll be able to provide the board and the community with some sort of update, not a plan yet, but I think in June's board meeting, I'll be able to provide you like an update just about some of the things that we're considering and planning and just how we might change some things to just better meet the needs of our kids and our parents, which is obviously the most important thing for us come the fall.
Yeah. I just want us to be ahead of that curve, just like we've been the leader of the pack in some things now, because I understand there's still some school districts in the county that haven't decided how they're going to do commencement, which shocks me. I know they aren't doing it till June sometime, but they haven't made those decisions of how they're going to handle commencement yet, which I can't believe. So I just think that let's be ahead of that and not behind the curveball, so that we are who we are. Amber.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other comments? Okay. Mr. Sayers, we'll move on with the personnel recommendations.
Yes, thank you again, Mrs. Snyder. And I think this would be a good time to introduce Brian Tippner. And there he is. as we prepare for our personnel recommendations, it certainly is a pleasure for me to introduce Brian Tepner. As the board is aware, you see an item on the agenda that would recommend Brian as our new principal at Powers Elementary School. And I don't know where to begin other than to say Brian brings outstanding credentials to Amherst. We had probably close to 70 applicants for the position. As you can imagine, it was a very sought after position and very strong competition. But throughout the process, which involved multiple administrators, multiple rounds of interviews, we had staff representation from Powers as well. Brian emerged as our consensus clear top choice. And he comes to us from Washington State, and he's in the process of relocating to the Amherst community. He will be a part of our community, not just working here, but living here as well. And he brings 9 years of administrative experience, principal's experience as a middle school and elementary school principal, outstanding interpersonal skills. And I have to say, the reference checking that we did, we actually talked to 4 different individuals in Washington State, and we just heard wonderful things, outstanding things about Brian, his work, his credentials. And it was a great process. And certainly at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Brian Tepner, who, pending your approval, will be our next principal at Powers Elementary School. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent Sayers, President Neidert, Vice President Gillis, and board members Jacobozzi, Zappa, and Giofrida, along with Assistant Superintendent Molnar. I want to just, and I'm sorry, I missed board member Engel. I want to make sure I just say thank you, tell you how excited I am about not only becoming a part of the Amherst School District, supporting the school community at Powers, but really about just digging in deep and becoming a part of this greater Amherst community. You know, I have learned over the years that words are talk is cheap. I'm gonna put my my words to action, and you're gonna see a person who will be deeply embedded in the grassroots of this community. I'm excited about getting the work started. I'm excited about, I just moved here, literally drove across the country, and then during spring break, and then flying back and forth, still working virtually a little bit. Not the way this was planned. This isn't the way I was planning to finish this year or to start, but excited about figuring this whole thing out and how we do this. Listening to the conversation you just had, very interested in trying to figure out how do you go about all those things to both end a year and start a year. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to listen in, and excited to get things rolling. Pending your approval.
Thank you very much, Brian, and welcome to the Amherst family.
You got my last name correct, so you'll probably get my vote.
I did hear that was part of the test, that I had to make sure I
you
said
passed.
names correctly.
You passed.
Okay,
The-
anything else you want to say about the personnel, Steve?
Yes, I just, real quickly, as the board is aware, I know you've had an opportunity to review the agenda. Number of items there, typical for this time of year. You'll see item D, obviously, is a recommendation to approve Brian as our new principal of Powers. A number of new teachers there, as Mike has referenced. Our support staff contracts are included for the next year as well as a number of other personnel items. And at this time, would like to recommend approval of items 9A through 9N.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Jacobozzi moved, Teresa seconds. Any discussion, questions? Roll call, please. Amy?
Mr. Jacobozzi,
Aye.
Mrs. Gillis,
Aye.
Mr. Engel,
Aye.
Mr. Zappa,
Aye.
Mrs. Snyder,
Aye.
Congratulations, Brian. It's official. Welcome to Amherst.
Yes. No, can I just
Thank
make a
you.
comment right here? I just like want
Yes.
to make a comment about Beth Schwartz. What a great job she's done for the school district, and thank her so much. And I'm glad that she's still going to be a comment, but just to say that she's done a wonderful job.
And Teresa, that's a great point. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because one of the things that impressed us about Brian throughout the interview process was how he wanted to reach out to Beth to get her sense of things. And we just thought that was very, very impressive because, as we all know, she has done just a wonderful and outstanding job here during her time in Amherst. And obviously, we're very disappointed to lose her as a principal, but so fortunate to be able to keep her in another capacity as a technology integration specialist, which given what we're going through now, certainly her skills and talent will be put to use. So again, thank you to Beth, and again, congratulations, Brian, and welcome aboard.
Thank you again. And I'll just add to that to say I spoke this morning with Beth, and she speaks highly of just everybody. She's just such a quality person, and somebody who's willing to share information and just a great spirit. So I really appreciate her time, and also getting to know Assistant Superintendent Engel as well. So it's been good to start digging into the work, and I appreciate everybody's time and support. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, and welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
Beth set the bar pretty high.
Welcome. You did.
Okay, Steve, we'll move on with educational recommendations.
Actually, yes, and actually, before we do that, we have one more personnel item. We'd like to recommend approval of item 9O.
oh,
So move.
Second.
Mr. Engel moved, Teresa second. Okay, discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Engel,
Aye.
Mrs. Gillis,
Aye.
Mr. Yakobozzi,
Abstain.
Mr. Zappa,
Aye.
Mrs. Snyder,
Aye. Thanks for keeping me on task, Amy. All right, now we'll move on with educational recommendations, Mr. Sayers.
Thank you very much. Just a few items here. I wanted to highlight a couple of items. Item D is again a unique item, resolution, and we've prepared this resolution in consultation with our board attorney. And he has recommended this resolution that, given the situation that we find ourselves in, gives us the flexibility to modify our grading procedures and graduation requirements as needed. And so again, I wanted the board to know that that's been prepared on advice of legal counsel. And then also item G, as you remember last month, we actually had a number of board policies that were approved, and board policy 1520 was actually approved. That we noticed afterwards that some of the titles needed to be updated. For example, we approved Director of Special Education instead of Director of Student Services. And that's just one example. So this is an updated policy, no other changes to the policy, just updating those administrative titles. So at this time, we'd like to recommend approval of items 10A through 10H.
So moved. Second.
Yakobozzi made the motion and Zappa second. Did I hear that
Yes.
correctly? Okay,
Yes.
any discussion? Roll call, please, Mrs. Giuffredo.
Mr. Yakobozzi,
Aye.
Mr. Zappa,
Aye.
Mr. Engel,
Aye.
Mrs. Gillis,
Aye.
Mrs. Snyder,
Aye. And then moving on to business recommendations, Mr. Sayers.
Thank you again. And just two items here. I wanted to speak just briefly about these two items. The first one involves a change order for our concession stand project. And as the board is aware, this is a project that was made possible by our funding and our naming rights agreement with Mercy Health. So certainly we appreciate that. But we do have a change order here. And actually there's 4 components to the change order. And I just wanted to review those briefly. We had a couple of unexpected situations that developed. The first item was that in the process of excavation, actually there was I guess, some cables that were running from the field house over to the area where the new concession stand is going to be that was unmarked. And I guess there was no conduit, and unfortunately that was, there was damage there during the excavation process. So that's a component of the change order. The other item that we ran into is where we thought we were going to tap into the city water, as I understand it from Mr. Grimmett, our buildings and grounds supervisor. When they went to do that, they discovered that evidently it was an abandoned line and there was no water. So we had to work closely with the city of Amherst. They were very helpful in bringing water line down Axtell. I think it's Axtell Street or Avenue. I don't recall which, right there just south of the high school. Again, something that we didn't know until we got into the project. But that was another item in the change order. And then a couple of other items which we kind of thought were important items to do. We had a small block building there in the southeast corner of the stadium that was in poor condition. Roof was in bad shape. Really weren't using it for much of anything other than storing some hurdles. So we decided to demo that building. So you see that in the change order. And then the biggest piece is some additional concrete work. Chuck and I, as we kind of looked at the area up there, thought that it would be worth it, and now would be the time to do some new concrete work in the entrance to the stadium, where you walk into the ticket booth area as you approach the old concession stand. That area there, some of the concrete is in not the best of condition. And of course, we knew just to the left, we would have this beautiful new concession restroom facility with nice concrete. And we just thought this was the time to redo that entire area. So that is the bulk of the change order. And again, I just wanted to kind of go over that rationale. And then the other item, again, I just want to thank Chuck Grimmett, our buildings and grounds supervisor, and Casey Wolf, our athletic director, for working closely with our Amherst Junior Comets football program. Again, we try to partner and work and do the best we can with things. And we had a garage there on the power site that, rather than demolishing, is actually going to be moved over towards the baseball, softball area, out towards the practice football field. And the Junior Comets program is doing all of the work, taking care of all that labor, actually pouring some concrete. And we are essentially going to lease that storage garage to them for like $1 a year. And you have the lease agreement there. And this is an arrangement they're very happy with. It gives them plenty of storage, which I know they are currently lacking in storage. So this gives them some storage there. And it's a building which, we didn't really have a need for, after the demo of the Powers Elementary School. So again, just worked out really well, nice partnership. And again, pending your approval, that lease will be in place and will be looked at on a year-to-year basis. And with that, I'd like to recommend approval of items 11A and 11B.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Engel and second by Mrs. Gillis. Anybody have any questions or concerns? If not, we'll move forward with roll call. Mrs. Giuffredo?
Mr. Engel,
Aye.
Mrs. Gillis. Aye. Mr. Yakobozzi,
Aye.
Mr. Zappa,
Aye.
Mrs. Snyder.
Aye. No need for executive session.
Nope.
So I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Yakubowski, second by Mrs. Gillis. Any discussion?
Hey,
Roll
real
call,
quick,
please. Oh, sure.
Okay. Can we go back up to the, what do I want to call this, the change order? Am I reading this right? That you got a sum of 538 at the top. Or at the bottom one, and then go up, the first one is a total sum of let me find it. 568. Are those supposed to be the equal numbers? Follow me?
Yeah, I would have to.
See where it says the contract sum will be increased by the change order in the amount of 8, but it's only total 538. Should that be 560?
Yes, it should be.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe the original contract, as I recall, was 529.
Yes,
And yes, the total amount of the change order is 38,726. And so, yes, that should be roughly, without doing the exact math, but it will be taken to roughly 568,000. That's correct.
So is this number where it says on the bottom, is that number correct or one of them wrong?
No, the 538 number is incorrect.
Okay,
it should be 529,000 and the change order should be 38,000.
okay, gotcha, okay.
Which should, like I say, take us to about 568 total.
That's all I got.
Okay. Anybody else? We
Nice
didn't take
catch,
roll call
Zach.
yet, did we?
No.
Okay, can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Yakubowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Gillis,
Aye.
Mr. Engel,
Aye.
Mr. Zappa,
Aye.
Mrs. Snyder.
Aye. Thank you, everyone, for participating today.